Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in this corporeal realm. Welcome to another exciting episode of Ancient Mysteries Unearthed Fireside Chat. I'm Brandon James Sim, co-hosting with our lovely creator, Chris Noble, and today we have a fascinating story that comes full circle back to the mother continent of Africa. Across this beautiful world are some anomalies, stone circles that perhaps held cattle is the going theory, but often those who study it have further questions. So, Chris, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Brandon. Thanks for that intro, my friend. And it is a really crazy. This is a really interesting topic. This is also one that I got to personally go and research in South Africa, about 2 hours out of Johannesburg. I went there in 2018, and got to stay with Michael Tellinger for 2 weeks, who is one of the foremost researchers in South Africa when it comes to the alternative or even the more traditional, more ancient views of our history when it comes to, like you said, the mother continent of Africa. And he does research and also goes into the indigenous people of that area and their stories, and actually can correlate it with a lot of the amazing research that we'll go through today in this episode of these amazing stone circle ruins, in which there are over a million of them. There actually are several million of these ruins scattered throughout not only South Africa, but parts of Zimbabwe. So it implies that if they were herding cattle, there was a heck of a lot of cattle back then. And of course, there's no doors or entrance ways in any of these stone circles. So it kind of throws that theory pretty quickly out the window, like most theories that we get taught in the mainstream for our history. So today we're going to go into that. We're also going to go into stone tool technology, which once again, in our traditional histories, the Stone Age is always referred to as the primitive age. Why are you guys so not advanced right now? What is this? The Stone Age? You know, we use that as an insult when we talk about primitive architecture or things like that. Interestingly enough, like we find in most of our history, that's actually not quite the case. If anything, there's actually sophisticated advanced technology that can come from stones, and we will give real life examples as to how that's possible in this episode, including a Taurus stone that looks like a donut that actually shut down the entire security system of an airport. That's right. So we're going to listen to that story from Michael Tellinger himself, who witnessed that firsthand. I got to hear that story in real life, but we'll watch it again in a lecture of his as well. So we've got technology, we've got these weird stone circles, and then I will also briefly touch upon a pretty profound spiritual experience I had in the most important, arguably, stone circle in South Africa called Adam's Calendar. It's in direct alignment with the pyramids of Giza. And I've been to both, and they both led to a spiritual, almost psychedelic experience. So we'll get into all of that today. It's going to be a pretty cool episode.
That's very fascinating. And just to touch on that Stone Age kind of idea that we have as a society, working with stone to me seems very tough. And oftentimes these stone structures are aligned with stars and are on waypoints of the earth and have massive weight to them. It's just, I don't ever consider working with stone primitive. I think it's challenging. So I'm always interested to hear what you got, and let's get right into it, brother.
Absolutely. So there's a lot to get into. And the thing that we're also going to touch in upon when we listen to Michael, about, I forget how long ago, but at least 5 or 6, probably more, maybe 8 or 9 years ago, started to realize that these stone circles were more than just interesting stones. They also rang like bells. So we're going to let's first talk about the actual stones that make up these millions of stone circle ruins, all littered across the southern part of Africa, really. And why do they ring like bells? Like, if anyone has, I don't really have stones right in front of me right now as we're talking, but I'll find these little two things. Stones don't really ring like a bell, okay? Like, this is probably better than most would sound. Most of the time, you're going to get a dull thud of a sound. So they ring like bells. Why? Well, we'll get into that in a moment. But for now, let's look into some examples of Michael Tellinger ringing these stones like a bell. And one more thing to consider with these things ringing like bells, we're going to start to get into this realm of resonance frequency and vibration. And when we've talked about this on almost, I swear, every episode of Ancient Mysteries Unearthed here, the ancients understood frequency, resonance, and sound to a degree we are just rediscovering now, like just rediscovering now. Okay. And that is an invisible technology in a lot of ways, which is why we don't see the classic evidence that we think we're looking for when we go into these archaeological places, museums, etc. But it's there, and we're going to discover a lot of that today. So,
Well, even the Greeks talked about, the spheres in the universe and the harmony of them. So once again, it's all like music, frequency, vibrations. It's ancient knowledge that we kind of assume that they didn't have a great grasp on, but they were inheriting that probably from older people as well. So it's always coming back to that, isn't it, Chris?
always. I don't even think we discover anything. I mean, this is a bigger conversation, but I think it's all just being remembered and rediscovered at this point.
I
And
love
if any,
that.
you know what I mean? And like, even when we're geniuses are channeling ideas, I think in our reality, every outside of time, everything's already created. So in a way, you're just tapping back into the collective consciousness of knowledge that's infinite. And these, I swear, these ancients understood how to do that because, as we'll get into later, when I had my spiritual, psychedelic, whatever English words fail to explain the the non-physical, I guess, those experiences were created in a way intentionally by the ancients and how they built their structures, how they designed their architecture, and everything, even where they built their structures, were all about enhancing consciousness and creating these almost out of body experiences. So backwards now, let's backtrack to the stones themselves that are making up all of these ruins, all these stone circle ruins throughout South Africa. They ring like bells. Why? Well, we'll get into that. Let's just take a look at this video that just has Michael Tellinger showing you how they ring like bells.
Let me also just show you how some of these other stones ring like bells. This is what I call, and as you can see, we find many of these elongated stones. This one is full of patina. It's thick patina, so it's quite dull, but you can still hear the effect. And this is a beautiful one. This one actually rings at 2 different frequencies. Dun dun dun, dun dun dun.
I have to jump in with that. As a musician, that's a perfect third harmony that this rock, supposed rock, which we'll also get into, are these even rocks? Michael Tellinger thinks otherwise. He thinks these are fossils, and we'll get into that in a moment.
Bones of the giants?
Perhaps, Brandon, perhaps. That's still a hard one for me to wrap my head around, but we'll get into it because there is more information on that we can at least show you wonderful folks watching this, who I know might jump all over that particular theory. But I do love and keep my mind open for that. Regardless of their body parts or not, we can clearly hear these things are ringing like bells. And that particular last one was a major third. You were talking about the Greeks and the music of the spheres. The spheres are all about musical intervals and harmonies. And we just hear this rock creating a perfect third harmony. I think there's something interesting there. What does that mean? I don't know, but I'm just letting you guys know that is a perfect third in music. We'll just watch the rest of this and hear a couple more rocks that ring like bells. Go experiment with this later today and let me know in the comments below, everybody. Can you make rocks ring like bells? I haven't been able to find many, I'll tell you that.
They're quite large. Look at this. Look at this one. And it looks also like it was inserted into something up to that point. And also, remember, they all ring like bells. This one is no exception. Alright, and on that note, there we go. That's better. That's what you want. You realize that this thing really rings like...
Okay, this is a great video on Telliger's YouTube channel, which of course all this will be in the description in the comment or description below that you can check this out. This is actually a compilation of his ringing bells, which I like because you can hear them in quicker succession and they sound like they're in the same key. And I do have close to perfect pitch, so I'm pretty good at checking at hearing those correlations. Any other musicians or good, people that have relatively solid pitch or perfect pitch, let me know in the comments. Did you just hear that all these random, quote unquote, random stones are all in the same bloody key? Because that's even crazier. That's me. Like, then they're somehow naturally tuned to the same frequency. I mean, that those last two you can easily hear. I'll play the one that right before this stone here. Take a listen. It was an octave lower, and then the next stone, it's like a perfect octave higher.
All right, and on that note, there we go. That's better.
Close.
That's what you want. All right, and on
Na, 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 na. That's a full octave. Interesting. Same key. I didn't even notice that when I was watching that. So, okay, this is an example of the ringing stones that comprise all of these stone circle ruins. And what do these stone circle ruins even look like? And Brandon, jump in if you have anything to say about those ringing stones here. But essentially, it's just...
Well, they sound like wind chimes.
Yeah, they do, don't they?
Like it sounds like wind chimes. And I was thinking about wind chimes, and I'm like, have I ever seen a stone wind chime? I think I have. I really do think I have before, and it's one of those things that you use nature to make perfect music in a way, right? It attracts birds, it attracts bees. It seems like it. The animals seem to like it. It's just interesting to make something that's solid stone ring like an instrument. I haven't experienced that in nature. I never, hit a shovel against a rock and have it make a musical note. It usually maybe a spark. That's about it.
Yeah, and I trust your opinion on that. You're out in nature quite a bit, and every time I've ever hit a rock, especially tree planting, like we both have, it's a thud, thud. Like, like at best, it's a brief little ding, but it's not like a resonating note that clearly has not only a note, but some of them have harmonic connections. So I'm going to go back to our screen share here, and I'm going to show you wonderful people also what these look like, these stone circles even look like, and then what they also look like from an aerial perspective. And I also took my own aerials, but I can't find them. They're in another hard drive. I just don't have them with me right now. But just take a look at this. So this is what these stone circle ruins look like from the top. I mean, when you trace these sacred or these just basic geometric shapes over top of them, they fit perfectly. And that's the immediate thing we got to start looking at is, okay, these look little disjointed. These all look also unique. All of these stone circles are, and again, remember, these are thousands and thousands and thousands of years old. Michael Tellinger has roughly estimated that these could be tens of thousands of years old, if not even older. And we actually do have a way of, look at these. The interesting thing about them too is that they're linked together. If you zoomed out even more, this is a good example here. You can see the stone circle in the center, but look at this. It almost looks like a flower and then the stem that attaches to a flower. These are all over the place. So basically you've got these stone circles all across Southern Africa. But these stone circles are attached. They're all linked together. Not all of them, because again, they're ruins, right? Some of them have been completely decimated. But as you can see here, it's like a road or just a link. As we do in our electric grid, everything links together. You've got a major power plant area, and then you've got your long, thin electrical lines that move outward and link up to other grids. It's the same kind of system here in this ancient stone circle system. And again, some of the stones you can see that are still there, some aren't, but you can even see that there were builds and whatnot there. So that's really interesting. And then what do these stone circles look like from inside? Well, I've got some of my own photos I can share that show you guys exactly what these things look like inside. And they're not huge. Some of them are only about as big as, maybe as tall as me. You know, they're not too per se impressive on the inside, but what is really impressive is just the sheer fact that, and I
Well,
can't
they're
find,
littered everywhere.
well, they're everywhere.
And
Exactly.
littered obviously is maybe not the right term, but you know what I mean. I
Yes.
think kind of the the reason why these haven't gained as much attention as, say, the pyramids or Stonehenge is that they're not in that grandeur of large. They're not the largest rocks either. And as you said, looking from above, they're not perfect in shape. So that's why people assume that they were to house cattle or animals, that they might be primitive shelters. Yet, once again, there's not a ton of evidence to suggest that, much like there's not a ton of evidence to suggest that the pyramids were tombs. Um, but yeah, I think that when I see these and I see that they're littered everywhere, and I think of the continent of Africa, and I think of how, the more you dig in the desert, the more you find. And then I think of, the Amazon and how they said there were cities there. And now with LiDAR, we're starting to realize that nature has reclaimed that so quickly. I'm like, what other secrets does Africa hold? Because it has got so much wilderness to it. So yeah,
Oh,
taking a
yeah.
look at these as you look, there's no mortar. They're just piled rocks, but there's got to be a reason for this. I don't believe that you're just littered these everywhere for no reason. And even if it was for no reason, it's evidence of a massive civilization then.
Well, we'll get into the reasons because it's pretty clear that there's something going on here. And a lot of the evidence to support what might be going on here is actually in the shape of these stone circle ruins. And as you can see from this photo, we're inside one of the ruins now. This is my awesome group of people I'm still in contact with because, these trips are great. You make the best friends, you meet the coolest people. Highly recommend anyone get on one of these adventures or join me in Egypt 2024, fall 2024. Details are going to be in the description below. So this is what it looks like from the inside. But when we go back and we look at the aerial perspective of these, you're going to notice that there is a pattern. And when we go back to these images that you're seeing here, the pattern is that, I'll just take this one as an example. These are cymatic shapes. And for those that don't know what the word cymatic means, cymatics are sound made visible, sound that vibrates in a physical medium like mud, sand, salt, water, etc. And it forms shapes, physical shapes. And we're going to pull up, just keep these in mind. See these images, these stone circles from like up top from an aerial perspective. Keep these images in mind as we go into showing you what actual cymatics look like when they're vibrating on a metal plate. This is a very famous experiment, so you might already know this. They put salt on a metal plate, they put different frequencies through the metal plate, and it creates different shapes. But if you're not as aware, this is going to be quite eye-opening for you to see how sound is actually made visible. And once again, notice the shapes that these cymatic patterns are making. And you're going to start to see a correlation and a connection to these ancient stone circles. And then we can start to go into this idea of perhaps there was a sound and frequency component, very important component to these stone circles. Once again, also including this idea of resonating rocks. We got resonating rocks in cymatic patterns. What could that mean? Well, let's listen to Michael talk about that for a moment.
It gets weirder and weirder. But the ruins weren't dwellings or houses, so what were the ruins for? We know from cymatic patterns what shapes of sound look like, and I think it's very obvious by now what the ruins were for. For those of you that have not seen this yet, to remind you what sound manifests, how sound manifests physical form. Every sound frequency has its very own specific shape. What you're looking at here is just a two-dimensional representation of a three-dimensional effect. So this is actually happening in 3D, moving away, creating these beautiful shapes and patterns. Prime resonance frequency, that's what it's all about. Every frequency has a very specific shape or cymatic pattern. And as you can see, the higher the frequency, the more complex the shape.
Sorry, but the shape here, and you're going to see this in cymatics, and it happens a lot. Looks very similar to a pagan cross, ancient symbolism coming through here as well. And that's what the ancients, a lot of their symbols have a frequency and a sound component to it as well, as we're seeing in some of these cymatic patterns, just as a side note.
Yeah, honestly, any cathedral, any ancient
The lower the
temple,
frequency, the larger the shape.
Like right there, look at that one. That's a
I'm always amazed how many people have not yet seen this. You know, I assume by now that everybody must know this, but there are always a large number of people that have never seen this.
For our listening audience, what's happening right now is every time the frequency is going up, the pattern of the sand on the metal plate is actually becoming more complex. The lower the frequency, the more basic, the more simple the structure is. The higher the frequency, the more complex.
wow.
More complex, even more complex.
And it just keeps going up and up and up. And just because you can't hear the frequency anymore doesn't mean it's going to stop. It keeps going above and below.
And also, Michael makes a really good point here. Just because you can't hear the frequency doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Just remember, light is a frequency. Everything that we sense, smell is frequency. Everything is frequency. So just because we can't hear it doesn't mean that the frequencies don't exist. And we're going to get into what frequencies are actually are emitting from these stone circles in particular in a moment. And they're going to blow your mind because it's powerful beyond measure.
So, Chris, I just want to point out something here. As we see this, they have salt obviously on some sort of, surface, and they're playing this frequency through it. And for the listening audience as well, the salt is stacking itself and moving around and making these shapes. Now, these shapes right now that we're looking at aren't exactly perfect. They're slightly obtuse or a little out of order here, but they're being stacked and forming, mounds and everything. And then I'm thinking about these rocks that you're showing us that are stacked and in these shapes. And then I started to think in my head, my weird head, what if they didn't build them at all? What if they did use frequency to move rocks? Anyways, that's my little weird brain moment.
Your weird brain might be more on point than you might think, sir. So let's put a pin in that. Audience, he's on to something, folks. Maybe you were too listening or watching this, and there will be more information coming that's going to allude to that.
We'll see below in a little while how low it can actually go, how low we have detected cymatic patterns.
Wow, look at that. I've seen that in cathedrals for sure. Yeah. Stained glass windows, you know?
Yep.
Always beautiful. So what the stone circles are just cymatic patterns representing the shape of the sound coming out of the ground at that specific place. That's it. So what these ancients knew, or the Anunnaki knew at this stage, I believe the Anunnaki were the ones that built all these, is they knew how to identify the shape of the sound frequency coming out at that specific place, and they placed the rocks on the shape of the cymatic pattern of the sound, in which case they basically amplified those sound frequencies. So they created an amplification structure. So cymatic patterns, that's why each stone circle is completely unique, none are ever the same, and this is why we started measuring very powerful frequencies in the gigahertz, sound frequencies coming out of the walls, and electromagnetic fields coming out of the walls, from 400 megahertz all the way up to 1800 megahertz at Adam's calendar. It is quite spectacular. Adam's calendar is a mystery, because the stone circles we can figure out, and we can understand how they amplify the sound frequencies because of the stones and the walls and the quartz. So it's the quartz in the rocks, in the stones, in the walls that do the vibration and the amplification. And the sound moves, and the moving sound then creates magnetic fields, and the moving magnetic fields create the electromagnetic fields. So, but Adam's calendar has got no walls. And yet it is infinitely more powerful than any of the stone circles. So something else is going on there. There's another mechanism at work there. And there we measured way beyond 375 gigahertz. The guy who was measuring it said he couldn't measure it any higher, but it indicates that it goes a lot higher than that. And then 1700 megahertz electromagnetic field running horizontally, and another one running vertically out of it. So we definitely have the indication of a toroidal field there, a toroidal vortex field that's being generated at Adam's calendar itself. And we have these weird flower shapes.
So he's going to get into another shape of these stones, but I want to quickly touch on Adam's calendar, and maybe I'm going to touch on my experience quickly at Adam's calendar.
Yeah, just for our viewers and listeners too, can you just kind of reiterate what you're talking about when you mention Adam's calendar?
Yeah, great. Thank you, Brandon. So Adam's calendar is kind of like the Stonehenge of Southern Africa. And it's actually in perfect alignment with the pyramids of Giza. And I'm gonna screen share quickly to show you guys.
Of course it is.
That I know, right?
Those pyramids are they're always getting their little toes in every door, aren't they?
They really are. So I just went on Google Earth, and I already knew this, but I wanted to illustrate it for you beautiful folks. Right, this, not the best here, but you can see at the, well, you can zoom in, I guess. So this is Adam's calendar down here, you can see, right, just out of Johannesburg. So we went here. I'm going to show you more of my footage from there in a second. And you draw a straight line all the way up to, God, Africa's big. Really is. Flying there took forever. And
yeah,
then
you know what? They say on maps too that they try and shrink it down a lot of the times, that it's much larger than it's often portrayed.
Heard that too. Can't confirm that, but I've heard that. If anyone has as well, let us know in the comments. So as you can see, I mean, it's perfectly in alignment with the pyramids of Giza. And I gotta say, from my personal experience, had very peculiar, life-changing, out of this world experiences there. And what Michael's talking about when it comes to it's a ruin. Like Adam's calendar, I'm going to show you a recreation of what Michael and his team kind of think it would have looked like at one point, and probably still in a more ruined state, but at least more together. And then these lines, they have, like, of course, like all these sites, right? Astronomical alignments, summer solstice, winter solstice, the cardinal directions, etc. So it is lined up to these things. And the center stone in the middle has a profound power, let's say, to it. And I don't know how else to describe it, but when, myself and the team that we were with, when we went down to Adam's calendar, I'm going to show you some photos here of just, like even just by this viewpoint of my good friend Javier looking out, if you can see the in the distance, you can see, like, it's like this very mystical place, just looking off into, actually, supposedly there's buried pyramids way in the distance, but that's a whole other another story, and I don't have a lot of proof for that one, but that's something that Michael was talking about. And I'll show you a couple of other photos of people when we were inside. Where were we here? Yeah, like this one here. So we were, it's really hard for me to find these photos as I'm going through them here, but we would even lay down against some of these rocks, and you can see everyone just like lying on the ground, putting their feet up on the rocks. That's the center stone right there in Adam's calendar. Remember what Michael was saying about the gigahertz of frequency that are being pumped out here. There's Michael having a nice lie down, all of us. And so what happened was that we came up to Adam's calendar, all excited. The energy of the area was pretty electric. You really feel quite alive. You have a lot of energy. And as we walk up to Adam's calendar, long story short, we basically did a group Om together to kind of center ourselves, get collected, get kind of connected, and then we all walked into the completely ruined stone circle enclosure. And as Michael said, these are just rocks. Yet somehow, when you go inside the circle, things change. The energy changes. The frequencies are off the charts. And we experienced the same thing, except for me, what it really felt like was you walk in and all of a sudden it's like hands go over your ears and everything gets muffled and like sound gets muffled and everything just kind of quiets down and everyone stopped talking. We didn't say stop talking. It just naturally people started to stop talking. And then after a while, not so long, everyone just got into some form of meditation. And then everyone ended up crying at one point or another, just having profound experiences, connections, or conversations with deceased loved ones, conversations with other beings, dimensions. I had some sort of a voice come into my mind and tell me about my life path. And it actually led me to leave my company that I had started and was building for like 7 years with my business partner. And it was a profound realization for me. And I came back home and pretty much left my business and business partnership and completely changed my life around. I mean, this moment in Adam's calendar was profound, and I know I'm not the only one who had that. So it's a special place, just like the Great Pyramid of Giza. When we were inside the Great Pyramid of Giza, everyone had a unique experience, started seeing entities, sacred geometry coming out of the walls, shifts in reality, them kind of their consciousness coming out of their body a bit. This is what happens at these sacred sites because there's profound energy that we don't understand. And there's definitely some sacred spiritual elements as well to these sites that we also don't understand. I'm sure some people do, but I am still learning more about that. And I know most people don't even understand or know that these things are even possible. So Adam's calendar, very much like Stonehenge, is, oh yeah, my chair is squeaky, isn't it? Thanks.
Yeah. So Chris, if I could just pop in here,
Yeah.
Talking about these profound experiences with sound and all this resonant energy. I did a voice intensive with the great David Smuckler, the Canadian voice intensive. And the last thing he does when you're done is you find a partner and you basically give like a frequency directly into the other person's mouth. You're not kissing or anything. You're just this far apart, basically giving like a and then we go to 4, and then we do it in a 4 group, and then we do 8, and then eventually the whole group of 30 of us are in a giant circle doing that frequency. And the funny thing is, save for one person in the entire group, everybody was rocked to their core. Several people were crying, but it was a good cry. It wasn't like a sad cry. It was an emotional release. It had maybe released some trauma or tension in their body. No one spoke. People were relaxed. They were chill. And except for this one person who was like, "Hey, that was cool, eh?" And everyone's like, "Dude, please." But yeah, so that's just from using your voice. This was in just in some industrial building in Toronto that we had rented space. Now imagine doing something like that, like you said, doing ohms in, Stonehenge or in a pyramid or in a sacred spot or in a waypoint of these ancient sites. I can only imagine, like David Tellinger was saying, it amplifies.
Yeah.
So very interesting to hear you say about those experiences, because I have experienced that with no help from ancient structures. So
Yeah. And thanks for bringing that up, Brandon, because it's great. Like we experience this in so many other ways in life. Even that, if anyone has ever been to church, I'm not even religious, but I've been to church for various events and things like that throughout my life. And if there's ever music, especially a choir or something like that, no one can leave that not feeling touched, not feeling extremely moved. Anyone who's been to a concert where you got like 30,000 people singing together, who cares if it's pop or rock or whatever music it is? It's just the fact that everyone's singing together is so profound. Or you don't have to be a sports fan, but you go to see a soccer game in South America or England or somewhere where you've got, again, tens of thousands of people at a game chanting and going crazy. It's an energy. It's intoxicating. It's powerful. And the ancients absolutely understand the power of that. So So Adam's Calendar is a unique space. We could do a full podcast on that place because the measurements they've taken there. Again, as Michael talked about, the frequencies coming up from there, the spiritual experiences people have had, like myself, that have had there, unbelievable, off the charts. Anyone that is watching this, please go visit there sometime. It's fantastic. I'm sure one day I'll do a tour back down there as well. And if anyone is interested in having this connection to these sites and having what I have to call a psychedelic or some form of a spiritual experience at these sites, then also feel free to check out the details in the comments, or sorry, the description below. And you can sign up for the Ancient Mysteries Unearthed Egypt tour in the fall of 2024. So anyway, I want to get back into some of the stone technology, because stone technology, once again, is something that most people do not think of, and I understand why. But let's get into this because there's some amazing stuff. So Michael's going to start talking about the flower-shaped ruins, which again sound very like, oh, it's a flower, nice, But no. There's incredible energy that comes from these particular shapes with these particular stones, with the quartz inside them and everything like that. Let's take yet another watch of this lecture from good old Michael Tellinger.
Shaped ruins, flower-shaped ruins that actually are magnetrons, giant magnetrons built out of quartz. And I asked two magnetron scientists, how much energy would a magnetron 40 or 50 meters in diameter generate built out of pure quartz? And the answer was more than all the power plants on Earth today. So whether that's accurate or not, I don't know. The point is we have thousands of these magnetron-type structures built out of quartz, all connected to each other into that giant grid, creating this huge energy grid of stone circles, magnetrons, generating insane amounts of energy, pulling it together and doing something. And that's the question. What were they using all that energy for? It couldn't have just been gold mining. I guess some of it was used for gold mining, but I'm now starting to think that they were possibly manipulating the weather, geoengineering, creating a climate, creating oxygen, putting more oxygen into the atmosphere, something like that, because this is such a gigantic initiative, such a gigantic scale infrastructure that they created. It had to be something to do, it had to have something to do with much more than just mining gold. And you'll see as we go into the magnetics and understanding magnetism and how these are connected to magnetic fields, how that could have also been used to possibly create oxygen out of sucking up water from the rivers, because many of the channels from the stone circles actually run and they end up in the river. They just run and end in the river. And this has puzzled me for years and years. But now I'm starting to figure out different aspects of this. In your mind, the more information you get, obviously, the more the different your conclusions are that you reach. So
okay, hold on.
Yeah.
So he's saying they could generate more power than all the power plants on Earth combined. I always hear that the pyramid could be a power plant. I just heard this rare recording of Nikola Tesla talking about how the energy of the universe is what we will harness to power all of the machines of the world. And he was really trucking at the beginning of the 19th century, and he was talking about all this energy that's around us. We just have to harness it. And it always comes back to this power. And we always, is that a modern, are we putting a modern lens on this to assume that it's power plants, do you think? Or is that just, we're just remembering this ancient art of creating power? Because don't forget that our smartphones and our computers and all this stuff, if it gets lost to time and if it does get reclaimed, they won't necessarily know what it is. They might think that they're statues or adornments. We lose translation due to our ancient past. And much like these circles back in the day, they'd be like, well, obviously this circle, transmits X, Y, and Z and does A, B, and C. But to us, we're like, I don't know, maybe it holds cattle.
Yeah.
Completely different thing. Maybe it could hold cattle. That's a very simple explanation. And you can't for sure rule things out, but
No, I would say though, if we're looking at it objectively though, it's like there's a lot less evidence to prove the cattle theory.
well, it's like the tombs of the pyramid. Like, where are the bodies?
Yeah, where are the I mean,
Where
yeah,
are the bodies?
where are the bodies in any of most of those pyramids, if not all of them, with the exception of maybe the Valley of the Kings or something like that. But anyway, it is the same. It is a valid question, and it's all about paradigm. It's all about perspective. That is one of the major things. What I've heard sometimes, I love listening to sometimes channeled explanations or whistleblowers that have come out from top secret
Channeled,
projects.
is that like you're talking about like
People
kind
that
of
can, like Edgar Casey, right? Edgar
yeah, yeah,
Casey,
yeah.
who is able
Getting
to
into like the
tap
real
into,
society here where you go into like the collective consciousness, like you're saying.
or the Akashic Records, it's known as, which is kind of Earth's database of its own history. And again, if you allow yourself to think openly to these possibilities, I'm not saying they're true, but they're certainly possibilities. And it seems to be that these devices or these buildings were built for multiple purposes almost always. So there was never just one purpose. To generate power may have been one of them, but they were doing a lot of things, and a lot of the things that they were doing were manipulating consciousness in ways that we don't understand. And that's where it starts to become, we look at these things with our lens of today, but our lens of today barely recognizes consciousness. We still are living in a very materialism-based society that thinks consciousness is just this phenomenon that happens when you're born. Your brain produces, this idea that you're awake and alive, and this is consciousness, and then you're dead, and that's it, extinguished. So
Well,
that's it.
we don't celebrate our, the organs like the pineal gland. We don't
Yeah.
celebrate that. We in fact we just try and brush over it. The
Or
producer of
dampen it.
DMT in the body.
Yeah.
Like
Or calcify it so it doesn't work anymore.
wow. I mean, I'll just say we don't celebrate it. So
Yeah, I guess we're still on YouTube. Although this is also going to be on Rumble, of course. So thank you, Rumble, for letting us talk about whatever we want to talk about. So anyway, I'm gonna play one last little bit here. I actually had quite a bit more to show today, and this is a lot to talk about. So maybe we'll jump into this. Let me know in the comments below if you guys want us to explore more of the stone technology, more of the stone circles, the details of things like Adam's calendar, and these flower-shaped magnetron stones. I mean, I got to go to all these places, and the last thing we're going to talk about today in this episode is the torus stone. And anyone that is familiar with toroidal energy or toroidal fields, those are the fields that make up everything. In a sense, our planet is a toroidal field. Nikola Tesla talks about that. Our electromagnetic field around the planet is a toroidal field. Toroidal fields, I guess I should probably pull up a visual that's going to help you see what that would look like. But essentially, imagine there is a center point of focused energy, and then you've got what basically looks like, how am I going to verbally explain this? You've got like funnels that curve outward at the bottom, and then basically loop around to the top and then curve down to the center point. So essentially forming like an infinite loop of energy. And this is the same kind of thing they've measured from black holes, suns, etc. And
it
let's,
also kind of parallels the shape of the brain, I find, when they do that.
yeah, I mean, as above, so below, right? And why do we see galaxies in a seashell, as an example, right? Like we see, or you cut a carrot in half, it looks identical to the iris of your eye. We've got, again, small examples of the large. The large represent the small, and that's all over. So here, I'm going to quickly show us a visual of what a toroid looks like, or toroidal
Does
shape.
this have anything to do with Taurus, like
It,
the constellation?
um, I don't know if anyone
Well,
does. And
language is powerful. I just wonder.
I think you're onto something, because we did find, yes, okay, Taurus, yeah. Taurus and toroidal energy are definitely absolutely connected. Let's look at this image here. Information flux on the topology of the torus. Yeah,
Oh my goodness.
correct,
And
sir.
see how it inverts itself like that. And then,
It's
you
infinite.
hear about like the hollow earth theory and stuff and entrances as the pole and people are like
We
that
are
couldn't
the
exist. And
same,
then you see this and you're like the earth probably has this field and it's just interesting.
right? I
What a
mean,
great story.
right?
Oh my
So,
God. I just want to I want to produce a film where we can go into the inner earth. Let's do
I
it.
think we will. I think as this channel grows and as you beautiful audience continue to like, subscribe, and support us here in the channel, we will grow this. And Brandon and myself and other members of the team, the growing team here, will absolutely go on some pretty epic expeditions. And
And
hey,
there are stories of it already. We know. There are journey to the center of the earth. There's one that comes out of one of the Nordic countries too.
oh, the
The
Smoky God.
Smoky God. Yeah,
Yeah,
what a great
we did an episode
listen.
on that, remember? And
Oh yeah, that's right.
yeah, it's so
What
good.
a great story. Oh my goodness. Anyways,
Yeah. Anyway,
Hollywood, knock knock.
I know it's so good. So this is the last one. So as you can see, Michael Tellinger and Nassim Haramein is not that he has anything to do with this story. He's great with the electric universe, though, and some wonderful quantum theories and things like that. But anyway, they are holding a Torah stone, and we actually found one when we were on our journey in South Africa as well, which was pretty profound. It was one of our favorite discoveries of the trip. We found a Torah stone as well. It looks like a donut for the listening audience. You're holding a rock donut, larger than a donut, but not that much larger, like an oversized donut, basically. And this is a rock. It's a rock that looks like an oversized donut. Most people would see that and it would stop right there. You'd be like, cool, I guess, awesome. But first of all, this is a ancient stone tool of some kind, and we don't exactly know what it was used for, of course. However, let's hear an incredible story from Michael Tellinger about what this stone did to a security system at an airport. And it just is an interesting example of the power that comes from these stone technologies from thousands and thousands and thousands, maybe millions of years ago. And they're still working and functioning, which again, as Brandon mentioned earlier, things like our cell phones would be, they're dead in a day. They don't function anymore. These tools are functioning well after their inventors are not only died off, but maybe extinct altogether. I don't know. So let's listen to this incredible story of what happened to Michael Tellinger. It's one of his most famous stories.
Stone that I took to Nassim Haramein in 2013 and became famous now. I've got it back in my possession. This Torah stone I threw into my bag. How many of you have heard the story? Okay, so not that many people. Okay, good, so I can tell it. So I packed this in bubble wrap and threw it in my hand luggage, and we left for Chicago via Doha, Qatar. You know, this is Arab airport on steroids, all the latest technology. And when we got onto the airplane to go to Chicago, we got delayed, and we were like 20 minutes late, and eventually they called my partner off the plane, and we got to the door, and the thing was gone already, that spacewalk thing, and there was a staircase going down, and suddenly I saw it was my bag there. So they cross-labeled our bags. So I walked down thinking, oh my God, my stone is in the bag. It's the stone. What am I going to tell them? I can't tell them this is ancient advanced technology. This is not going to go down well. So I think, okay, it's African arts and crafts. Cool, African arts and crafts. So I get down and I'm really nervous. There are 5 guys with guns, and I'm sweating, so I'm hoping that their fingers aren't sweating on the trigger. And open my bag. They open your bag, there's a security thread in your bag. So I open my bag and I know it's a stone, so I go straight and I pull out the stone. It's wrapped in bubble wrap and packing tape. I have no idea how I opened it, because it's virtually impossible to open that with your bare fingers. You know what I mean? It's like, and somehow I opened it and it popped out. I said, you see, it's a stone from my friend in Hawaii, and African arts and crafts. And there was one African guy there that leaned over. He didn't have a gun, and he leaned over their shoulders, and he said, oh, I've seen one of those before. And I only realized months later that he probably diffused the tension. When I got back on the plane, so they said, okay, good, put it back in your bag, and bag goes on the plane. I get back on the plane, sit down, and when I sit down, my partner says to me, when the captain came out of the cockpit, he said, whatever is in that bag crashed the TSA security system. So it came from the captain. It didn't come from me or anybody else. The captain volunteered that information to us. So we have the USA, TSA, Homeland Security to thank for proving scientifically that we're dealing with ancient advanced technology.
I love that story. It's just like, I remember hearing that for the first time, and he told it when we were there and at his museum. And part of Michael Tellinger's tours, and I'll link his website in the description below, is you stay at his Stone Circle Museum for that time. He's got great accommodation. This is like a free promo, I guess, for you, Michael, and you're welcome.
Yeah,
He's
pump it
great,
up.
and I highly recommend you guys check this out because you just hear stories like this, and I mean this. It's just it blows your mind, and it's so interesting because you can't make this kind of stuff up. It's just so fascinating. This little rock crashed the entire security system and network of this very advanced security system at a Qatar airport. I mean, yeah, you just
It's strange. You wouldn't expect us. You'd expect it to be, some little device, not a stone circle.
not a stone circle. So these are the mysteries. These are the mysteries of South Africa, of the stone circles, and of stone technology that we really still are just scratching the surface. And much thanks to researchers like Michael Tellinger who have provided us with some much needed alternative perspectives on these. And Michael, a lot of his work also, he refers to the Zuni elder Credo Mutwa. And I got Credo Mutwa's book when I was down there, and all of his book, like these are and of course the native indigenous teachings of the tribes of that area, and that have been around for, of course, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And they talk about the seeding of mankind, the creation of mankind happening down there in Adam's calendar. So there are also folklore and mythologies and oral histories that can confirm and correlate to a lot of the theories that we're talking about in today's episode and with Michael Tellinger. So there's a link. And the modern day Western, history of that is it's just never going to talk about it. So
No,
we're
we
bringing
never
it to you
do.
folks today. And if there's anyone watching who has more information on this or lives in South Africa and has a bit more of a local perspective, let us know. What kind of stories have you heard? What kind of folklore? What kind of oral traditions talk about these? And maybe they have any information on what these tools were used for, what these circles were used for. Would love to know.
Well, we always want to hear from our audience. We love when you guys are engaged with us. We love when you reach out and tell us cool stories. So much of what we do here is dependent on your experience and your wants and your needs. So open up those floodgates, drop a comment. We always give a shout out. Chris, are we doing a shout out today?
Well, we gotta,
Oh,
right?
we gotta do yes, a viewer shout out because we love your comments. The wilder and the crazier, the better. Let us hear experiences. We want to hear stories. We want to hear ideas, theories. It should be a think tank. We should get this moving, watching that salt pile up. I'm going, if you played music to the world, could you make your own structures just by frequency? That's where my brain went. Is that a theory? That's a theory. It could be crazy. People could say that's physically impossible, but you know, try talking to an ancient Roman about a smartphone. They'd say that's not possible. So
Exactly.
you never know.
Well, I'm going to read a comment from one of our more consistent viewers. Goes by Randy Mackin 477.
Hey, Randy, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, Brandon remembers this wonderful soul here. So, hey, Randy, if that is indeed your first name, it's always hard to tell with YouTube counts and all that stuff. But anyway, Randy Mackin 477, thank you. And what Randy's saying this time around, I guess I should maybe share my screen so you can see, guys, what Mr. Randy is saying.
What's shaking,
And
Randy? Thanks for listening.
yeah, thanks for listening, everybody. So he's saying, I don't know. This is to do with our artificial moon episode. So I don't know. This is from Randy. I don't know what our mood is, but or I think he's going to say he meant to
That's
say
probably a typo. That's okay. I'm not judging.
about our mood. But what I can say with absolutely no hesitation is we didn't land on it with the equipment that we have been shown. I have had experiences that I could see through the moon or see to the moon where there was a weirdly yellow tint to the moonlight. We were out at my favorite hillbilly hotel, aka the bed of my pickup out in the cornfield.
Ooh.
Mad respect, Mr. Randy. I can
Like
relate to
that,
that.
Randy.
That sounds lovely. We do that same in good old Canada here too. And what he said here is that in this, when he was looking up at the moon, there were colors of light that they took a, so anyway, he says, we always took our telescope with us, but it looked like it was an X-ray from our planet reflecting on the filament above. And no, I'm not
Firmament.
talking about flat earth. The filament is in the Bible, but we sat there for hours and we couldn't get a picture developed from at least 20 taken. The moon is
Interesting.
really challenging to take photos and video of. I can speak from experience there. And I'm not exactly sure what Randy's getting at here. And hey, Randy, leave us another comment if you really want to dive into this more. But it sounds like, we in this episode, I remember we talked about how there actually could be a holographic projection that the moon is maybe putting out so that all of us on the earth see only one specific image, because in this projection you can actually see a line, like a static line, like where it sort of resets the image almost, and it just kind of moves down slowly, and very peculiar looking image. I wonder if Randy was seeing, or Randy Mackin 477 was seeing some sort of a weird, when he says filament, some sort of a weird like filter on the moon. And that is curious because we've talked about that in that episode where there's a lot of weird stuff coming from the moon and also being potentially projected onto or from the moon. And
Well, that moon is special in many, many ways. It's unique
yeah,
to the universe. There's not many like it anyways.
no, and
And
so, and it
and
actually,
as far as the moon landing goes, Chris, I mean, as a filmmaker, the one thing that gets me when everyone's like, they didn't land on the moon. I'm not saying we did or we didn't, but what I am going to say is that as a filmmaker, to have 1969 to project imagery in live stream back to Earth, I mean, that's
perfectly, basically.
I I can't even do that when I'm backwoods camping here in Canada with my smartphone that's hooked up to a satellite grid. So I'm just saying that if you think about the filming and the shots and the audio, it's a little polished for 1969 out in outer space for the first time. Just saying.
And here's the thing too, is that actually it kind of comes back to what we are talking about in this episode, which was that there's also the whole idea of when did the moon arrive to Earth. And there's actually there are ancient Greek texts that talk about these people, these beings, I forget the name of these people, that they refer to. The Greeks talk about the people that lived before the moon arrived. And then we were looking at these stone circles in South Africa, and one of Michael Tellinger's theories was that these also could have been to create a more, I guess, beneficial or a more conducive ozone for their people, for the Anunnaki, or for us as they were creating us, in at least as the stories and the folklore go for that. So were they terraforming Earth and trying to create a more hospitable Earth because there wasn't a moon yet? Because perhaps these stone circles, and it's actually it's pretty well proven that these stone circles are at least 40 to 50,000 years old, because very briefly, there's a thing called patina, which is like a bacteria that slowly grows over rock. And some of these rocks have broken, and there's patina that's grown into the broken part. And they've dated the patina, which they can because it's organic matter. And when they carbon date it, they were given like an age of at least 50 to 60,000 years old. And that's just when the stone would have broken. So, I mean, these are very, very old. So they likely could have, if you're going to go with the theory of the moon arriving to Earth maybe only 12,000 so years ago, which is one of the theories, maybe these stone circles were actually a part of terraforming a more hospitable Earth until the moon came and gave us our seasons and the tides and all that good stuff. So crazy thoughts. But hey, all started with you, Randy Mackin 477. Thanks for your comment.
Randy dropping the
Appreciate it, my friend.
heat.
Yeah,
Who's going to drop the heat next time? I want to see. Let's bring it. You know what? I challenge you, listeners and viewers, drop some hot comments. Let's get some hot takes going on the podcast.
absolutely. So that concludes it for today, folks. Brandon, thanks as always, man, for co-hosting. It's such a blast. I always appreciate it.
Well, Chris, we appreciate your voice, your knowledge, your exploration, and your curiosity. And we appreciate all of our viewers and our listeners for hopping on board. Maybe you're sitting down with a hot cup of cocoa or in bed trying to relax, and then you're sleeping right now. Or maybe this is how you start your morning. We appreciate however you want to digest this content, and keep on coming back, share it with your friends, and check out all that Chris has to offer with Ancient Mysteries Unearthed. Yeah, there's lots to offer and to explore, and he's got exciting things coming up with his trip to Egypt and everything like that. So the more connected you are, the more adventures you will partake on. So
Yeah.
thank you. Stay curious, stay kind, everyone. Chris, final thoughts?
Well, thanks again, Brandon. Thank you, beautiful audience, for watching and listening. Really appreciate it. And, let us know, like we said in the comments, what questions come up from watching this episode, and what stories or information do you want to share with us? Let us know, as this is a growing community. And you can check the description below. As this is growing, there's going to be more and more links of ways to stay connected with us, memberships, but even also taking all this knowledge and doing more practical things with it. What I mean by practical are actually taking this knowledge and having it actually improve your life, add to your life in different ways. And what I'm going to be doing this year and from now on, and again, whenever you're watching this, this could be years from now, this could be next week. And check the description below for workshops to sign up for, because I'll be leading different workshops on different forms of meditation, different forms of breath work, and these ancient techniques that all of the people that we've been talking about on all these episodes were practicing. We're bringing them back, just like we've been saying. We're remembering all this information. We're remembering all this tech. We're bringing it back. I want to find some very practical, everyday ways we can distill this also, and not just have fun knowledge to talk about, but actually put it into action. Things like meditation, breath work, and all those ancient practices. So check in the description below. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody, and we will catch you on the next episode of Ancient Mysteries Unearthed. Until next time.